Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the cargo ship New Frontier, watching the stars through the main window. The ship was flying through a dangerous part of space called the Veil Nebula. Purple and blue gas clouds floated all around, them like cosmic fog. This was one of the few routes that connected the outer human colonies to the main trade systems. "How much longer until we reach Titan Station?" Jake asked his navigator. Lisa Parker looked at her screens and did some quick math. "About 6 hours, Captain. We should be clear of the nebula in 2 hours." Jake nodded. The New Frontier was carrying medical supplies to the colony on Kepler 442b. The colonists there had been hit by a plague, and they needed the medicine badly. Jake had volunteered for this dangerous run because he knew how important it was. His engineer, Danny Rodriguez, was in the engine room making sure everything ran smoothly. Danny was good at his job and could fix almost anything. Amy Brooks, their security chief, was checking the weapons systems. Even though the New Frontier was just a cargo ship, it had some basic defenses. "Captain," said Kelly Adams from her communications station, "I'm picking up some strange signals on the edge of our sensors." Jake walked over to look at Kelly's screen. She was young but very smart with technology. "What kind of signals?" "They look like engine signatures. 3 ships, maybe 4. They're trying to hide behind the gas clouds." Jake felt his stomach tighten. Pirates often use the nebula to hide and attack cargo ships. "Amy, get to the weapons console. Danny, I need more power to the shields." Amy Brooks was already moving. She had served in the Earth Defense Force before joining Jake's crew. Her fingers flew over the weapon controls. "Shields are charging, Captain, but we only have 2 plasma cannons and some basic missiles." The main screen suddenly lit up with bright flashes. 3 large ships came out of the purple gas clouds. They were Krex destroyers, each one twice the size of the New Frontier. The ships had a reptilian design with sharp edges and dark metal plating. "This is Warlord Zathak of the Krex Empire," a harsh voice came through the radio. "Stop your engines and prepare to be boarded. Surrender now and we might let you live." Jake looked at his crew. Lisa was scared but stayed at her post. Kelly was already working on something at her station. Danny's voice came through the intercom from the engine room. "Captain, I can give you full power to either weapons or engines, but not both." The Krex ships moved closer. They had the New Frontier surrounded, in a triangle formation. Each destroyer had enough firepower to destroy the cargo ship 10 times over. Jake had seen what happened to ships that tried to fight the Krex pirates. Usually, there were no survivors. "What are your orders, Captain?" Amy asked. Her hand was ready over the weapons controls. Jake was quiet for a moment. He looked at each of his crew members. They were all watching him, waiting for his decision. He had been a cargo captain for 15 years. He had always avoided fights when possible. But today felt different. "Kelly, send out a Priority 7 signal on all frequencies," Jake said calmly. Kelly looked surprised. "Sir, are you sure? Protocol 7 is only for extreme situations." "Do it." Kelly's fingers moved quickly over her console. A special signal went out from the New Frontier on every radio frequency they had. It was a code that most alien species didn't understand. The Krex ships were getting closer. Jake could see the weapons on their hulls charging up with red energy. "Danny, I need you to work on the quantum beacon," Jake said into his microphone. "The beacon? But Captain, that's only used for—" "I know what it's used for. Just do it." Lisa looked confused. "Captain, what's Protocol 7? Before Jake could answer, the Krex ships fired warning shots. Bright red beams passed just over the New Frontier. The ship shook from the energy waves. Last warning, humans, Warlord Zethak's voice growled through the radio. Surrender or be destroyed. Jake picked up the microphone. This is Captain Morrison of the cargo vessel New Frontier. We are a civilian ship carrying medical supplies to sick colonists. We don't care what you carry, Zethak replied. Krex pirates take what we want. Your cargo, your ship, your lives. All belong to us now. Amy looked at Jake. Captain, they're powering up their main weapons. We have maybe 30 seconds before they fire. The 3 Krex destroyers moved into attack position. Their weapons glowed brighter. Jake could see smaller fighter ships launching from the destroyer bays. Soon the New Frontier would be surrounded by enemies. But Jake seemed strangely calm. He looked at his watch and then at Kelly. Has the signal gone out? Yes, sir. Protocol 7 message sent on all frequencies. Good. Danny, how's that beacon coming? Danny's voice came through the speakers. Almost ready, Captain. Just need another minute. Warlord Zethak was getting impatient. Your minute is up, human. Prepare to die. The Krex ships began moving closer. Their weapons were fully charged now. Jake could see Krex soldiers preparing to board his ship. The reptilian aliens were known across the galaxy for their cruelty. They took no prisoners and showed no mercy. Amy, power down our weapons, Jake said quietly. Sir? Amy couldn't believe what she heard. Power them down. Lisa, cut the engines. Lisa's hands shook as she followed orders. The New Frontier slowed to a stop. The ship was now floating helplessly in space, surrounded by Krex warships. Smart choice, human. Zethak's voice was full of satisfaction. Prepare to be boarded. My soldiers will be gentle if you cooperate. Jake smiled slightly. We'll cooperate fully with standard procedures. The Krex ships moved closer. Boarding pods launched from the destroyers toward the New Frontier. In a few minutes, Krex warriors would be on their ship. Kelly looked at Jake with worry in her eyes. Captain, are you sure about this? Jake nodded. Trust the procedure, Kelly. Everything is going according to plan. Lisa didn't understand. What plan? We just surrendered to pirates. Did we? Jake asked. He looked out at the gas clouds around them. Or did we just follow Protocol 7 exactly as we were trained? The first Krex boarding pod attached to their ship with a loud clang. Amy checked her sidearm and looked at Jake. Whatever happens next, Captain, we're with you. Jake nodded. Remember, everyone, stay calm, follow procedure, and trust in the pack. The airlock began to cycle open. Heavy footsteps echoed through the ship as Krex warriors entered the New Frontier. The first Krex warrior through the airlock was huge. He stood nearly 8 feet tall with dark green scales covering his body. His yellow eyes scanned the bridge like a hungry predator. More Krex soldiers followed behind him, carrying plasma, rifles, and wearing black armor. Jake and his crew stood with their hands visible, just as they had been trained. The lead Krex warrior looked around the bridge with surprise. Most alien crews would be screaming or begging for mercy by now. But the human seemed calm and ready. I am Commander Vex, the Krex said in rough English. You will surrender your ship and cargo to the Krex Empire. Understood, Jake replied simply. We are following standard human procedure for pirate encounters. Commander, Vex looked confused. Procedure? You speak of procedure when facing death? Kelly continued working at her communication station. Her fingers moved quickly over the controls. The Krex warrior next to her growled and pointed his rifle at her. What is she doing? Vex demanded. Standard communications protocol, Jake answered. She's logging our encounter and updating our status with proper authorities. The Kreks looked at each other with puzzlement. Most species they raided would either fight desperately or surrender completely. These humans were doing something different. They seemed to be following some kind of plan. Down in the engine room, Danny Rodriguez continued working on the quantum beacon. A Krek soldier watched him but didn't understand what the human was doing. The device looked like a simple navigation tool. You, Vex pointed at Lisa. Navigate. What is your cargo? Lisa pulled up the manifest on her screen. Medical supplies. For Kepler 442b colony, antibiotics, surgical equipment, and emergency food rations. Good. We will take everything. Vex turned to his soldiers. Search the ship. Find anything valuable. Amy Brooks stood quietly at her station. She had powered down the weapons as Jake ordered, but her hand stayed near her sidearm. The Krek soldiers split up to search different parts of the ship. Kelly finished her work at the communications station. Protocol 7 status update complete, Captain. What is Protocol 7? Commander Vex asked. He was getting suspicious of how organized the humans seemed. Jake looked directly at the Krek's commander. It's our standard procedure when encountering hostile forces. We document everything, update our location, and follow proper safety guidelines. Safety guidelines? Vex laughed with a harsh sound. You are prisoners now. There is no safety for you. But something was bothering the Krek's commander. In all his years of raiding, he had never seen prisoners act like this. The humans seemed almost like they were waiting for something. Lisa watched her navigation screens carefully. Captain, I'm showing some interesting readings from the outer sensor array. What kind of readings? Jake asked. Just normal background. Radiation from the nebula, Lisa replied, but she said it in a way that sounded like code. Vex was getting angry. Stop talking in riddles! You are prisoners! Amy stepped forward slightly. Sir, we understand our situation. We're just following the procedures we were taught for this type of encounter. What procedures? Vex demanded. What did they teach? You? Jake remained calm. Standard Earth Defense Force guidelines? Document everything, maintain communications, and wait for appropriate response. Response? Vex looked around nervously. What response? Your ship is alone. We destroyed your escorts. We didn't have escorts, Kelly said quietly. Then what response do you expect? Jake checked his watch again. The appropriate response for a Protocol 7 situation. Down in the engine room, Danny finished his work on the quantum beacon. The device hummed quietly as it powered up. The Krek soldier watching him didn't realize what it meant. Device is ready, Captain. Danny's voice came through the intercom. Vex grabbed Jake by the shirt. What device? What is ready? Our quantum beacon, Jake answered honestly. It's part of standard safety equipment on all human ships. The Krek's commander didn't understand human technology very well. Most alien species use different methods for long-distance communication. He let go of Jake and walked to the main window. Warlord. Zethak will want to speak with you, Vex said. He likes to meet the captains of ships he captures before he kills them. We'll cooperate fully, Jake replied. Amy looked at her captain with questions in her eyes. She had served with the Earth Defense Force, but she had never heard of Protocol 7. Lisa and Kelly also seemed confused, but they trusted Jake. Captain, Amy said quietly, permission to speak privately? Denied, Vex interrupted. No private conversations. All prisoners will remain where they can be watched. Jake nodded to Amy. It's fine. Just follow standard procedure, Kelly continued, monitoring her communications equipment. The Krek soldiers didn't stop her because they thought she was just doing normal ship operations. But she was actually listening to radio frequencies that most aliens couldn't detect. Captain, Kelly said, in a normal voice, I'm picking up some background chatter on the outer bands. What kind of chatter? Jake asked. Just normal traffic from ships passing through nearby systems. But again, she said it in a way that sounded like code. Vex was getting more and more suspicious. You humans are planning something, he said. I can sense it. We're just following the procedures we were trained to follow, Jake repeated. Nothing more. Lisa watched her sensor screens. Captain, I'm detecting some unusual energy readings from Sector 7. Unusual how? Jake asked. Just some electromagnetic fluctuations. Probably nothing important. Vex moved to look at Lisa's screen, but the readings looked normal to him. All he could see were the usual energy patterns from the gas clouds around them. Danny came up from the engine room with 2 Krek soldiers behind him. Quantum beacon is operating normally, Captain. All systems are functioning within normal parameters. Good work, Jake said. Commander Vex looked at all the humans. They seemed to be communicating about normal ship operations, but something felt wrong. His warrior instincts told him that these humans were not behaving like normal prisoners. Enough. Talking, Vex said. We will take you to Warlord Zithek now. He will decide your fate. We understand, Jake replied. We're ready to meet with your commander. As the Krek soldiers prepared to move the human crew, none of them noticed the small changes happening around them. Kelly's communications equipment was still sending signals. Danny's quantum beacon was working perfectly. And Lisa's sensors were tracking energy signatures that were getting closer to their position. The humans followed Protocol 7 exactly, as they had been trained. They stayed calm, documented everything, and waited for the appropriate response. They just had to trust that the response would come in time. The Krek soldiers marched Jake and his crew through the corridors of the New Frontier toward the cargo bay. Commander Vex wanted to separate the humans to question them individually. This was standard Krek's practice. Most alien species became confused and frightened when separated from their group leaders. You 3 go to Cargo Bay 1, Vex ordered, pointing at Jake, Lisa, and Kelly. The other 2 come with me to engineering. As they walked, Amy caught Jake's eye for just a moment. Without saying a word, she tapped her fingers against her leg 3 times. Jake nodded slightly. Lisa saw the exchange and quietly touched her earpiece twice. Kelly noticed and adjusted something on her small handheld device. The Krek soldiers didn't understand what they were seeing. To them, it looked like nervous fidgeting. They had no idea that the humans were communicating in a way that came as naturally as breathing. Danny and Amy were taken to the engineering section with 4 Krek soldiers. The reptilian warriors spread out to cover all the exits. Commander Vex stood in the center of the room with his arms crossed. Now we will have some real answers, Vex said. What was your captain planning? What is Protocol 7? Amy looked directly at him. I already told you. It's standard procedure for encounters with hostile forces. You lie, Vex growled. No species has procedures for being captured by pirates. They either fight or surrender completely. Danny was examining some of the engineering equipment that the Kreks had damaged during their boarding. You broke the secondary power coupling, he said calmly. We break whatever we want, one of the Krek soldiers replied. I'm just saying, if you want the ship to keep working, that coupling needs to be fixed. Vex looked confused again. Most prisoners would be terrified right now. These humans acted like they were still just doing their jobs. "You will tell me about your captain's plan," Vex demanded, "or I will start breaking more than equipment." Amy stepped forward. "There is no plan. We're just following the procedures we were trained to follow." While Vex questioned Amy, Danny quietly moved toward a wall panel. He seemed to be checking damage, but his fingers found a hidden switch. He pressed it once, then twice, then 3 times. The pattern matched what Amy had signaled earlier. In the cargo bay, Jake, Lisa, and Kelly were surrounded by 6 Krex soldiers. The warriors thought they had the humans under complete control. But Jake was watching the air vents above them. Lisa was counting the number of steps to each exit. Kelly was listening to sounds from other parts of the ship. "Your engineer is being questioned," one of the Krex soldiers told Jake. "If he lies, he will suffer." "Danny doesn't lie," Jake replied simply. "We will see. Krex have ways of making aliens tell the truth." Lisa moved slightly to the left. It looked like she was just shifting her weight. But now she could see the reflection of the corridor in a metal panel. Kelly adjusted her position too. Now she had a clear view of the main cargo doors. The Krex soldiers noticed the movement, but didn't think it was important. Prisoners often moved around when they were nervous. Back in engineering, Danny had finished checking the power systems. "The quantum beacon is still working properly," he told Amy in a normal voice. Amy nodded. "Good. We'll need stable power for the communications array." They were talking about normal ship operations, but Commander Vex sensed something underneath their words. His predator instincts told him that something was wrong. "Stop talking," Vex ordered. "You will only speak when I ask questions." "Understood," Amy replied. But she had already heard what she needed to hear. Danny's mention of the quantum beacon told her that the first part of their procedure was complete. The Krex warriors didn't understand that humans had evolved as pack hunters. On Earth, early humans had learned to coordinate without speaking. They used small gestures, eye contact, and positioning to communicate while hunting large and dangerous animals. These instincts had never gone away. Human soldiers trained to use them. Human ship crews learned them for emergencies. Even civilian humans could fall back on these ancient patterns when necessary. Danny moved to another control panel. As he worked, he tapped out a rhythm with his tools. The sound seemed random, but Amy recognized the pattern. 3 short taps, 2 long ones, then 3 short taps again. It was an old Earth signal that meant message received. Amy stretched, her arms above her head, then lowered them slowly. To the Krex soldiers, it looked like she was trying to relieve stress. But Danny saw her fingers form a quick shape that meant ready to proceed. In the cargo bay, Kelly was pretending to look at her handheld device, but she was actually watching the reflection in its screen. She could see one of the Krex soldiers moving behind her. Lisa noticed Kelly's position and shifted slightly to the right. Jake saw both movements. His crew was positioning themselves without any spoken words. They were getting ready for something, even though they didn't know exactly what would happen next. The Krex soldiers were getting restless. Usually prisoners would be crying or begging by now. These humans just stood calmly and occasionally moved around. It was unnatural. "Why are you not afraid?" one of the soldiers asked Jake. Jake looked at him with honest eyes. "Fear doesn't help. The situation. We're following our training." "What training teaches you not to fear death?" "The kind that teaches you to trust your pack," Jake replied. The Krex soldier didn't understand. The Krex were individual fighters. Each warrior fought for his own glory and survival. The idea of trusting others completely was foreign to them. Commander Vex was having the same problem in engineering. He had interrogated hundreds of prisoners from dozens of species, but these humans were different. They seemed to be working together even when they were separated. "You," Vex pointed at Danny. "Go stand in that corner." Danny moved where he was, told. But as he walked, he passed close to Amy. For just a second, their shoulders touched. It looked like an accident, but Amy felt Danny tap twice against her arm. Amy understood. She moved toward the wall where Vex had pointed. As she walked, she picked up a small tool that had fallen on the floor. The Krek soldiers saw her pick it up but didn't think it was dangerous. Kelly's handheld device made a soft beeping sound. She looked at it and frowned. "The communications array is showing some interference," she told Jake. Jake nodded. "Probably just the nebula gas affecting our signals." But Lisa understood. Kelly's device wasn't showing interference. It was showing incoming signals, signals that were getting stronger. The humans continued their ancient dance of coordination. Small movements, brief touches, and careful positioning. They were preparing for something, but the Kreks couldn't see it coming. Their reptilian minds didn't understand pack behavior. They saw individuals who happened to be in the same place. They couldn't see the invisible bonds that connected the humans together. Soon that blindness would cost them everything. 200 miles away, hidden deep in the purple gas clouds of the Veil Nebula, Admiral Ben Clark stood on the bridge of the battleship Iron Wolf. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm blue eyes. Around him, his crew worked quietly at their stations. "Admiral," called out his communications officer, "we're receiving a Protocol 7 signal from the cargo vessel New Frontier." Ben walked over to look at the message. His tactical officer, Nina Foster, joined him. She was young, but very experienced in space combat. "Captain Jake Morrison," Ben read from the screen. "Good man. His ship is carrying medical supplies to Kepler, Colony. 3 Krex destroyers have surrounded him," Nina reported. "The signal shows they've been boarded." Ben nodded calmly. "How long since the signal was sent?" 14 minutes, sir." Ben looked at the tactical display. The Iron Wolf was not alone in the nebula. Scattered throughout the gas clouds were 12 other human ships. To anyone looking at sensors, the area appeared empty. But the humans had learned to use the nebula itself as camouflage. "Send the activation signal to all hunter groups," Ben ordered. Nina's fingers moved over her console. All across the Veil Nebula, hidden human ships began to power up their engines. They had been waiting in silent mode, drifting with the gas. Currents like sleeping predators. The human fleet was not organized like other species' navies. Most aliens built large fleets that stayed together for protection, but humans had learned something different from their ancient hunting patterns. They spread out like a pack of wolves, surrounding their prey before moving in for the kill. Captain Ryan Hall commanded the destroyer Silent Runner. His ship had been hiding behind a large asteroid for 6 hours. When he received the activation signal, he smiled. "Time to go hunting, people," Ryan told his crew. "Power up all systems, but keep the stealth fields active." The Silent Runner began moving toward the New Frontier's location, but it wasn't going directly. Ryan was taking a path that would put his ship behind the Krex destroyers. On the other side of the nebula, Captain Maria Santos was commanding the cruiser Nighthawk. Her ship was smaller than a destroyer, but it was fast and deadly. When she got the signal, she immediately began moving to cut off any escape routes. "Estimated time to intercept?" Maria asked her navigator. 12 minutes if we use the gas streams for cover," came the reply. "Do it." and make sure our friends know we're coming. All across the nebula, human ships were moving into position, but they weren't just randomly attacking. Each ship had a specific role to play. Some would block escape routes. Others would provide covering fire. A few would focus on disabling enemy weapons. Back on the Iron Wolf, Admiral Clark watched the tactical display as his ships moved into position. Each ship was represented by a small dot of light. To anyone else, it would look like chaos, but Ben could see the pattern. "It's beautiful," Nina said quietly, "like watching a dance." "Our ancestors hunted mammoths the same way," Ben replied. "Surround the prey, cut off escape routes, then attack from all sides at once." The Kreks had made a critical mistake. They thought the Veil Nebula was empty space that they could use to hide from galactic authorities. But the humans had been watching this area for months. They had placed sensor networks throughout the gas clouds. They knew every ship that entered or left the region. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're getting detailed scans from the New Frontiers quantum beacon." Ben looked at the information flowing across his screen. The beacon was sending real-time data about the Kreks' ships, their weapons, their shields, their exact positions, everything the human fleet needed to plan their attack. 3 Kestrel-class destroyers, Nina read from the tactical display. "Standard Kreks configuration, heavy armor, powerful weapons, but slow to maneuver." "And they're bunched up around the New Frontier," Ben observed. "Classic mistake. They're so focused on their prey that they can't see the hunters approaching." The human ships continued to move through the nebula. They used the gas clouds to hide their approach. They followed paths that kept them invisible to Kreks' sensors. It was like watching ghosts move through the cosmic fog. Captain Luke Carter commanded the fast attack ship Razor Wind. His job was to get close enough to disable the Kreks' communications before they could call for help. Luke had done this kind of mission many times before. 2 minutes to optimal position, his pilot reported. "Good. Remember, we hit their communication array first. We don't want them sending distress calls to the rest of their fleet." On another ship, Captain Sarah Mitchell was preparing her squadron of fighters. The small, fast ships would swarm the Kreks destroyers once the main attack began. Sarah had trained her pilots to fight like a school of fish, moving together in perfect coordination. "Remember," Sarah told her pilots over the radio, "we're not trying to destroy them quickly. We're trying to confuse them, make them think they're being attacked from everywhere at once." Admiral Clark continued to watch his ships move into position. Each captain knew their role without being told. They had practiced this many times in training simulations. But more than that, they understood the ancient hunting instincts that drove their tactics. "All ships report ready," Nina announced. Ben looked at his watch. 18 minutes since the Protocol 7 signal was sent. Jake and his crew have been prisoners for almost 20 minutes. "Should we begin the attack, Admiral?" Ben studied the tactical display one more time. Every human ship was in position. The Kreks destroyers were completely surrounded, but they didn't know it yet. The trap was perfect. "Not yet," Ben said calmly. "Jake's crew is still following procedure. They're gathering intelligence and staying alive. We wait for the right moment." "How? Will we know when that is?" Ben smiled slightly. "Jake will tell us. He's been a cargo captain for 15 years, but he was a naval officer before that. He knows what he's doing." The human fleet continued to wait in the gas clouds. They were like wolves watching a herd of elk, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Kreks pirates had no idea that they had flown into a carefully prepared hunting ground. Soon, the ancient human instincts for pack hunting would be unleashed among the stars. and the galaxy would remember why humans had become the dominant predators in space. Admiral Ben Clark remembered the first time humans had encountered alien pirates. It was 30 years ago, when humanity was still new to galactic civilization. Back then, human ships traveled alone and unprotected through space. They were easy targets for alien raiders. The memory came back clearly as Ben watched his fleet prepare for battle. He had been a young lieutenant then, serving on the cargo ship Endeavor. Krek's pirates had attacked them near the Centauri system. The human crew had fought bravely, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. Ben had watched his captain die trying to protect the ship. He had seen his friends captured and enslaved. That day, he had made a promise. Humanity would never be helpless. Again. "Nina," Ben said to his tactical officer, "do you know why other species fight as individuals?" Nina looked up from her console. "I'm not sure I understand, Admiral. Most alien species evolved as either lone predators or prey animals. When they fight, each individual tries to survive. But humans evolved differently." Ben walked to the main display screen. It showed the positions of all his ships scattered throughout the nebula. To an outside observer, it would look random, but there was a pattern that only humans could see. On Earth, our ancestors hunted animals much larger than themselves. A single human couldn't kill a mammoth or a cave bear, but a group of humans working together could bring down any prey. Nina began to understand. So we learned to think as a group instead of as individuals. Exactly. When humans fight, we don't think about individual survival. We think about the survival of the pack. That's what makes us different. The tactical display showed that Captain Ryan Hall's ship, the Silent Runner, was now in position behind the Krek's destroyers. Captain Maria Santos and the Nighthawk were cutting off escape routes to the north. Captain Luke Carter was ready to disable enemy communications. Each ship knows its role, Ben continued. But more than that, each captain can feel what the others are thinking. We call it intuition, but it's really just our ancient hunting instincts. Ben remembered how human military doctrine had evolved after that first encounter with the Kreks. Pirates. Traditional alien naval tactics focused on large fleets fighting each other in open space. Ship against ship, weapon against weapon. But humans had developed something different. They studied how wolf packs hunted. They looked at how ancient human hunters had surrounded and trapped their prey. Then they applied those lessons to space warfare. "The mathematics of predation," Ben said quietly. "Sir?" Nina asked. "That's what we call our tactical doctrine. It's based on a simple equation. Individual strength times coordination equals total hunting effectiveness." Ben pulled up a display showing historical battle records. When the Kreks first encountered human fleets, they were confused. Our ships seemed weaker than theirs. Our weapons were less powerful. But we kept winning battles. The records showed dozens of encounters over the past 20 years. In each one, human forces had been outnumbered or outgunned, but the humans had won by using coordination and tactics that alien species couldn't understand. They couldn't figure out why, Ben continued. Their individual ships were stronger. Their weapons hit harder. By their mathematics, they should have won every battle. Nina studied the records. But they were thinking like individuals. We were thinking like a pack. Right. A Krek's captain fights to bring glory to himself. A human captain fights to ensure the pack succeeds. That changes everything. Ben remembered the development of Protocol 7. It had started as a simple distress signal, but over time it had evolved into something much more sophisticated. Now it was a complete communication system that allowed human crews to coordinate with rescue forces. When Jake sent that Protocol 7 signal, Ben explained, he wasn't just calling for help. He was telling us everything we needed to know. The number of enemy ships, their positions, their weapons, even the layout of his own vessel. The quantum beacon on the New Frontier was still sending data. It showed the exact positions of the 3 Krex destroyers. It revealed which weapons they had powered up. It even tracked the movement of Krex soldiers inside Jake's ship. The beacon is more than just a tracking device, Ben said. It's Jake's way of staying connected to the pack. Even though he's been captured, he's still part of our hunting strategy. Nina looked at the incoming data. He's telling us that his crew is ready for something. But what? Ben smiled. That's the beauty of pack hunting. Jake doesn't need to know our exact plan. He just needs to trust that we're coming. His job is to keep his crew alive and gather intelligence until we arrive. The tactical display showed that all human ships were now in position. The Krex destroyers were completely surrounded, but they still didn't know it. They were focused on their captured prey, just like the ancient predators that early humans had hunted. "Admiral," the communications officer called out, "we're receiving a new signal from the New Frontier." Ben looked at the message. It was short but clear. Jake was telling them that the Krex soldiers had split up his crew. Some were in the cargo bay, others in engineering. The pirates were getting ready to interrogate them separately. "Perfect," Ben said. "They're dividing their forces. Classic mistake." Nina checked the positions of all human ships. "All vessels, report ready for attack." Ben looked at his watch. 22 minutes since the original signal. Jake's crew has been prisoners long enough to gather good intelligence, and the Krex are starting to get overconfident. The ancient human hunting pattern was almost complete. The prey had been surrounded. Intelligence had been gathered. The pack was ready to strike. "Nina, send a message to all ships," Ben ordered. "Phase 1 begins in 60 seconds. Nina's fingers moved over her console, sending coded signals to the entire human fleet. Each captain would receive the same message at exactly the same time. The coordination was perfect, just like their ancestors. Surrounding a mammoth on the African plains. 30 seconds, Nina announced. Ben watched the tactical display one final time. Every ship was exactly where it needed to be. Every captain understood their role. The mathematics of predation were about to be demonstrated once again. 10 seconds, Ben. Thought about that young lieutenant from 30 years ago, watching his captain die to alien pirates. That day had taught humanity an important lesson. In space, just like on ancient Earth, the pack always wins over the individual. Execute phase 1, Ben ordered. All across the Veil Nebula, human warships began to move. The hunt was beginning. The first sign that something was wrong came when Warlord Zethak's communications officer couldn't reach the other Krex ships in the area. "Sir," the officer called from his station on the command destroyer. "I'm getting interference on all long-range frequencies." Zethak was a massive Krex warrior, covered in dark red scales and battle scars. He had been raiding ships in this sector for 5 years. Nothing had ever gone wrong before. "What kind of interference?" Zethak demanded. "Unknown, sir. It started about 2 minutes ago. All our communication arrays are functioning normally, but no signals are getting through." On board the New Frontier, Kelly Adams had heard the Krex communications officer trying to send messages. Her modified equipment was blocking every signal. The pirates were now cut off from any reinforcements. At exactly the same moment, Captain Luke Carter's ship, the Razor Wind, fired a single precise shot from the edge of the nebula. The blast hit the communication array on Zethak's destroyer. Sparks flew across the Krex command bridge. "We're under attack!" Zythak roared. "All weapons, return fire!" But the Krex couldn't see where the shot had come from. The human ship had fired from behind a gas cloud and immediately moved to a new position. The destroyer's sensors showed nothing but empty space. Then the real attack began. Captain Ryan Hall brought the silent runner out of hiding behind the large asteroid. His ship appeared on the Krex sensors like a ghost materializing from nowhere. Before the Krex could react, the silent runner fired a full spread of missiles at the rear destroyer. The Krex ship's shields absorbed most of the damage, but the attack came from a direction they hadn't expected. Zythak ordered his ships to turn and face this new threat. But as soon as the Krex destroyers began to turn, Captain Maria Santos attacked from the opposite side. The Nighthawk came screaming out of a gas cloud with all weapons firing. Her ship was smaller than the Krex destroyers, but it was much faster. "Contact starboard!" the Krex tactical officer shouted. "Human cruiser, range 8,000 meters. Zythak was confused. Two human ships had appeared from completely different directions. How had they gotten so close without being detected? "Destroy them both," Zythak ordered. "All ships, focus fire." "On the cruiser!" The three Krex destroyers turned their massive weapons toward the Nighthawk. But before they could fire, 6 more human ships appeared from different directions. They came out of the gas clouds like sharks emerging from murky water. Captain Sarah Mitchell led her squadron of fighters in a coordinated attack. 12 small, fast ships swarmed around the Krex destroyers like angry hornets. They fired quick bursts at the enemy shields, then darted away before the heavy weapons could target them. "Where are they all coming from?" Zythak's tactical officer asked in panic. The Krex had never seen anything like this. Usually, enemy fleets approached from one direction. Ships fought in orderly formations, but the humans seemed to be attacking from everywhere at once. Admiral Clark's battleship, the Iron Wolf, was the last to reveal itself. The massive vessel emerged from behind a wall of purple gas like a mountain rising from the sea. Its weapons were already charged and ready. "This is Admiral Ben Clark of the Earth Defense Force," came a calm voice over the radio. "You are surrounded. Surrender immediately and you will be treated according to galactic law." Warlord Zythak looked at his tactical display in disbelief. Somehow, 13 human ships had surrounded his 3 destroyers without being detected. The display showed human vessels in every direction. "Impossible," Zythak whispered. "This sector was empty. Our scouts confirmed it. But the humans had been here all along. They had been hiding in the gas clouds, behind asteroids, and in the sensor shadows of the nebula itself. They had turned the entire region into a hunting ground. "Sir," the Krex communications officer said nervously, "they're jamming all our frequencies. I can't send a distress call." Zythak realized that this had been planned from the beginning. The humans hadn't just stumbled onto his raid. They had been waiting for him. "All ships, attack formation Gamma," Zythak ordered. "We'll punch through their line and escape to open space." The 3 Krex destroyers moved closer together, forming a tight triangle. This was standard Krex tactics when outnumbered. Concentrate firepower and try to break through the enemy formation. But the humans didn't fight like other species. As soon as the Krex ships grouped together, the human vessels adjusted their positions. They maintained their surrounding formation, while staying just out of range of the heavy Krex weapons. Captain Ryan Hall watched from the silent runner as the Krex ships tried to organize their defense. "They're still thinking like individuals," he told his crew. "Each ship is trying to protect itself." The human ships began a coordinated attack pattern that the Krex had never seen before. They didn't all attack at once. Instead, They took turns striking different targets while the others provided covering fire. The Nighthawk would dart in from one side, fire a quick burst, then retreat. Before the Krex could respond, the Silent Runner would attack from another angle. Then Captain Carter's ship would strike from a third direction. The Krex gunners couldn't keep up. Every time they targeted one human ship, another would attack from behind. The human vessels moved like a single organism, sharing information and coordinating their strikes. "They're sharing targeting data," the Krex tactical officer reported. "When one ship identifies our weak points, all the others know about it instantly." Zethak was beginning to understand what was happening. The human ships weren't fighting as separate vessels. They were fighting as parts of a single, larger entity. It was like fighting a creature with 13 different arms. Sarah Mitchell's fighters continued their swarming attacks. They were too small and fast for the Krex heavy weapons to hit, but their combined firepower was slowly wearing down the enemy shields. "Shield generators on Destroyer 3 are failing," one of the fighter pilots reported. "Copy that," Sarah replied. "All fighters, focus on that target. Let's bring it down." The 12 fighters concentrated their attack on the weakened destroyer. They struck in perfect coordination, hitting the same shield section at exactly the same time. The combined impact overloaded the Krex shield generators. Destroyer 3 has lost shields, the Krex tactical officer reported. Admiral Clark saw the opening that his fighters had created. "All ships, target the unshielded destroyer. Fire on my mark." Every human ship turned toward the exposed Krex vessel. For a moment, space was silent. Then Clark gave the order. Fire. 13 human ships fired at exactly the same instant. Why, combined blast lit up the nebula like a small star. When the light faded, the Krex destroyer was a twisted wreck drifting in space. Warlord Zethak watched one of his ships die and realized the truth. The humans weren't just coordinating their attacks. They were hunting him with the patience and skill of apex predators. And he was the prey. With one of his destroyers destroyed and the other badly damaged, Warlord Zethak made a desperate decision. He would take the human prisoners and use them as hostages to escape. It was a tactic that had worked against other species before. "All remaining soldiers, fall back to the human cargo ship," Zethak ordered through his communicator. "We're taking their vessel and getting out of here." But Zethak didn't understand that Jake and his crew had been preparing for exactly this situation. The moment the human fleet had begun their attack, Jake had given his crew a simple signal. He had tapped his fingers 3 times against his leg. Amy Brooks had understood immediately. The signal meant Phase 2. Now it was time for the New Frontier crew to stop being prisoners and start being hunters. Commander Vex was moving through the corridors of the cargo ship with 4 Krex soldiers when the lights suddenly went out. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. "What happened to the power?" Vex demanded. Danny Rodriguez's voice came through the ship's intercom system. "Sorry about that. Had to shut down the main power grid to prevent overload. Safety procedure." But it wasn't a safety procedure. Danny had deliberately cut power to the main lighting and artificial gravity systems. He had also locked down most of the internal doors, trapping the Krex soldiers in different sections of the ship. In the cargo bay, Jake, Lisa, and Kelly found themselves in near darkness with 3 confused Krex guards. The aliens were trying to adjust to the dim red emergency lights when Kelly made her move. She had been holding a small device that looked like a simple scanner. But when she activated it, the device produced a brilliant flash of light. The Krex, with their sensitive reptilian eyes, were temporarily blinded. Jake and Lisa moved at the same instant. They had been positioning themselves for this moment ever since they were first captured. Jake grabbed a metal cargo container and used it to pin one of the guards against the wall. Lisa picked up a heavy tool and struck another guard in the back of the knee. The third Krek soldier tried to fire his weapon, but he couldn't see clearly after Kelly's flash. His shot went wide, hitting the ceiling. Before he could fire again, Kelly had tackled him from behind. In the engineering section, Amy and Danny were dealing with their own guards. When the lights went out, Amy had been standing next to the wall panel where she had picked up the small tool earlier. In the darkness, she used the tool to short-circuit a power conduit. Sparks flew everywhere, creating more confusion. Danny, who knew the ship's layout perfectly, moved through the darkness. Like he could see normally, he reached the emergency controls and activated the fire suppression system. Foam sprayed from the ceiling, making the floor slippery and filling the air with thick white mist. The Krek soldiers couldn't see, couldn't move easily, and couldn't breathe properly in the chemical foam. Amy had trained with the Earth Defense Force for situations exactly like this. She moved through the confusion like a ghost, using her knowledge of close-quarters combat to disable the enemy soldiers one by one. Commander Vex realized that somehow the human prisoners had turned into the hunters. His soldiers were calling for help on their communicators, but many of them were no longer responding. "Impossible," Vex growled. "They're just civilian cargo handlers." But Vex was wrong. Humans didn't have separate classes of warriors and civilians like other species. Every human learned basic survival and combat skills. Even cargo ship crews trained for emergency situations. Jake's voice came through the ship's intercom. "Commander, Vex, this is Captain Morrison. Your soldiers are surrounded and outmaneuvered. I suggest you surrender." Vex was furious. "You think you can threaten me? I am a Krek's warrior." "I'm not threatening you," Jake replied calmly. "I'm just stating facts. Check with your soldiers." Vex tried to contact his warriors, but most of them weren't answering. The few who did respond were either trapped, injured, or calling for help. Somehow, 5 human civilians had defeated 15 armed Krek's soldiers. In the cargo bay, Lisa was using cargo straps to tie up the unconscious guards. "Jake, I've got 3 secured here." "Engineering is clear," Amy reported. 4 soldiers down, 2 unconscious, 2 trapped behind a locked bulkhead. Kelly was monitoring the ship's sensors. "I'm tracking the remaining Krek's forces. Looks like Commander Vex and about 6 soldiers are holed up near the airlock." Jake smiled grimly. The Kreks were learning what humans had always known. In close quarters, the advantage went to whoever knew the territory better. This was the new frontier, and Jake's crew knew every corner, every passage, and every hiding place. "Danny, can you isolate the airlock section?" "Already working on it, Captain. I can cut their power, block their communications, and even control their air supply." Vex was beginning to understand his situation. He and his remaining soldiers were trapped on an enemy ship. The human crew knew exactly where they were, but the Kreks couldn't track the humans moving through their own vessel. "This is impossible," one of Vex's soldiers said. "How are civilian cargo handlers defeating trained warriors?" Vex didn't have an answer. In all his years of raiding, he had never encountered prey that turned into predators so quickly. Jake's voice came through the intercom again. "Commander Vex, I'm going to make you an offer. Surrender now, and we'll turn you over to the Galactic authorities alive. Keep fighting, and we'll defend our ship using any means necessary." Vex looked around at his remaining soldiers. They were scared and confused. The easy raid had turned into a nightmare. They were outnumbered, outmaneuvered, and trapped on an enemy vessel. Outside the ship, Warlord Zythak was watching his fleet fall apart. The human warships continued their coordinated attacks, destroying his second destroyer and crippling the third. Soon, his command ship would be the only one left. "Sir," his communications officer called out desperately, "we've lost contact with all boarding parties on the human cargo ship." Zythak couldn't believe what he was hearing. A small crew of civilian humans had somehow defeated his elite warriors. It was impossible, but the evidence was right there on his sensors. The human cargo ship was still intact. It was still broadcasting signals. But none of his soldiers were responding to orders. Zythak realized that everything had gone wrong from the moment they had attacked the human vessel. This hadn't been a simple raid. It had been a trap, and he had walked right into it. Now he was the one being hunted. Warlord Zythak's command destroyer was the last ship left. The human fleet had systematically destroyed or disabled all his other vessels. But Zythak wasn't ready to give up. He had one final, desperate plan. "Set course for the human cargo ship," Zythak ordered. "Full ramming speed." His bridge crew looked at him in shock. "Sir, our own soldiers are still aboard that vessel." "They have failed me," Zythak growled. "I will not be defeated by these pack-hunting humans. If I die, I take them with me." The massive Krex destroyer began accelerating toward the new frontier. Zythak planned to ram the smaller ship and destroy it along with his own vessel. It was a warrior's death, the kind of ending that Krex legends were made of. But Admiral Clark had been watching Zythak's ship carefully. He had seen this kind of desperate attack before. When cornered, many alien commanders chose to die fighting rather than surrender. "All ships clear firing lanes," Clark ordered. "Zythak is making his final run." The human fleet adjusted their positions to avoid hitting the new frontier. But they kept their weapons trained on the approaching destroyer. If Zythak got too close to Jake's ship, they would have to destroy him. On board the new frontier, Jake was tracking the approaching destroyer on his sensors. "He's coming straight at us," Jake told his crew over the intercom. "Impact in 3 minutes." Amy was still dealing with the remaining Krex soldiers near the airlock. "Captain, I can have the ship ready for emergency maneuvers in 2 minutes." "Do it," Jake replied, "and make sure our prisoners are secured. This is going to be rough." But Zythak had underestimated human engineering. The new frontier was a cargo ship, but it had been built by humans who understood the dangers of space. Travel. The ship was more maneuverable than it looked. Danny Rodriguez worked frantically in the engine room. "Jake, I can give you emergency power in 90 seconds, but it's going to burn out half our systems." "Do it, Danny. We just need to survive long enough for the fleet to help us." Lisa was already calculating an evasion course. Her fingers flew over the navigation controls as she plotted a path that would take them away from the destroyer's ramming course. Outside, the human fleet was moving into attack position. But they had to be careful. If they fired too many weapons at once, they might accidentally hit the new frontier. Captain Sarah Mitchell had a different idea. "Admiral, request permission to try something unconventional." "What do you have in mind?" "Sarah? My fighters are small enough to get between the destroyer and the cargo ship. We can't stop that thing, but we might be able to change its course." Clark understood immediately. "Do it. All fighters. Support Captain Mitchell." The 12 human fighters accelerated toward the massive Krex destroyer. They were like tiny birds attacking a giant eagle. Their weapons couldn't seriously damage the big ship, but they could be very annoying. Sarah led her squadron in a coordinated attack on the destroyer's navigation sensors. They fired concentrated bursts at the ship's sensor arrays, temporarily blinding the Krex helmsman. "I can't see the target," the Krex pilot called out. "Then fire at where it should be," Zithak roared. But without accurate sensors, the destroyer began to drift slightly off course. The fighters continued their harassing attacks, striking at the ship's maneuvering thrusters and guidance systems. On the new frontier, Danny finished his work in the engine room. "Emergency power online, Captain." Jake felt the ship's engines surge with new energy. "Lisa, execute evasion pattern now." The cargo ship suddenly accelerated away from its previous position. It wasn't fast enough to outrun the destroyer, but it didn't need to be. The fighter attacks had thrown off Zithak's aim just enough. The massive destroyer roared past the new frontier, missing by less than 100 meters. Zithak had failed in his ramming attempt. "Now!" Admiral Clark ordered. Every human ship in the fleet fired at once. The combined firepower of 13 vessels struck the Krek's destroyer from all sides. The ship's shields collapsed instantly. Its hull cracked and split open. Explosions rippled along its length. But Zithak's ship didn't explode completely. The command section remained intact, though it was badly damaged and drifting helplessly in space. "Admiral," Nina reported, "the destroyer is disabled. Life support is failing, but there are still life signs aboard." Clark nodded. "Send boarding parties. We'll take survivors as prisoners." 20 minutes later, human Marines had secured the wreckage of Zithak's ship. They found the Krek's commander in his ruined bridge, badly injured, but still alive. Captain Jake Morrison volunteered to speak with the dying warlord. He wanted to understand why the Kreks had chosen to attack a medical supply ship. Jake found Zithak in the destroyer's medical bay. The alien warrior was covered in bandages, but his yellow eyes were still alert and angry. "You!" Zithak said when he saw Jake. "You are the cargo captain." "That's right," Jake replied. "I'm Captain Morrison." Zithak tried to laugh, but it came out as a painful cough. "A cargo captain, a simple freighter crew, and you defeated my entire fleet." Jake sat down in a chair next to the bed. "We had help." "Yes," Zithak said quietly. "Your pack. They came for you, just like you knew they would. That's what humans do. We look after each other." Zithak was quiet for a long moment. He had spent his life raiding and pillaging across the galaxy. He had attacked hundreds of ships from dozens of different species, but he had never encountered anything like the humans. "I have been thinking," Zithak said slowly, "about why we always lose when we fight your kind." "Oh? Other species fight like we do. Each warrior seeks individual glory. Each ship captain wants to win honor for himself. But you humans," Zithak paused to catch his breath. His injuries were serious, and the doctors said he didn't have long to live. "You humans fight like one creature with many bodies. When we attacked your ship, we thought we were capturing 5 prisoners, but we were really attacking an entire pack." Jake nodded. "That's one way to look at it. Your cargo ship sent a signal, and 13 warships came to help. Not because they were ordered to, not because they hoped for reward. They came because you are part of their pack." Zithak's voice was getting weaker. "My soldiers could not defeat your crew because they were not fighting 5 individuals. They were fighting against the strength of your entire species." Jake leaned forward. "Is that what you think?" Zithak's eyes met Jake's. The alien warrior's voice dropped to a whisper. "We never stood a chance against you humans. Not from the moment your species learned to hunt together. In space, on planets, in war, in peace, you are always part of the pack. And the pack always wins." Zithak closed his eyes and was quiet for a long time. When he spoke again, his voice was so soft that Jake had to lean close to hear. Tell me, human, when your kind spreads across the galaxy, will you remember mercy? Jake was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "We're taking you to a medical station where you can get proper treatment. If you survive, you'll be tried for your crimes, but you'll be treated fairly." "Why?" Zethak asked. "I would have killed you and your crew." "Because that's what civilized beings do," Jake replied. "The pack protects everyone, even former enemies." Zethak smiled slightly. It was the first time Jake had seen a Krex show anything other than anger or fear. "Perhaps," Zethak whispered, "there is hope for the galaxy after all." Outside the medical bay, Admiral Clark was coordinating the rescue of survivors from all the destroyed ships. Human medical teams were treating wounded Krex soldiers with the same care they would give to human patients. The new frontier was already on its way to Kepler Colony with its vital medical supplies. The human fleet had accomplished its mission, with minimal casualties and maximum efficiency. But most importantly, they had demonstrated once again why humanity had become the dominant force in galactic civilization. Not because they were the strongest individually, but because they understood something that other species had never learned. The pack always survives, the pack always wins, and the pack never abandons its own.